right, here we go. Welcome to Wake the Fuck Up Wednesday. Aloha, Ikitama sun-kissed. I just got back from Hawaii like 2 days ago. I remember, but thank goodness it was sunny when I arrived here. It was awesome. I had an amazing, like, just getting back into diving was awesome. And it was the first time that I had been alone on a long trip in a long time. And it was the longest I've been away from my little one, like ever. It was 2 weeks. I led a retreat sea kayaking the Nepali coast of Kauai once when she was little. And that was for like 9 days. But you know, when they're little, they're kind of like, oh, where'd mom go? Oh, someone's sticking a bottle in my mouth with her breast milk in it. Okay, that's good enough. But at this age, she like notices when I'm gone, right? But everything was fine. I had a great time. Family was good. It was all good. So I'm stoked to be back. I'm really looking forward to my future trips to the islands with the adventure mastermind people and all that. So it's going to be awesome. Now, when I was in Hawaii, I don't know if you all remember this, but when I had first decided to move there, because I split my time between Alaska and Hawaii, I was like on the plane and I was like, shit, I forgot to rent a car. Then I was looking at car rentals and I was like, I'm going to be here for months. And so let me see if I can just find like a cheap one to buy, like as I figure out my life here. So I was on Craigslist and I found this like used 2003 Honda Civic with 160,000 miles on it. And I was like, okay, yes, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this like used Honda Civic. Right. And so I bought it on the plane, like negotiated. I was like, hey, if, like, will you take this much if I just like roll with it? And I knew that there were a couple of issues with it, but it was like so cheap. Like, and I was like, if this thing lasts me 3 months, it'll have been worth whatever I paid. Right. So anyway, for the most part, since college, I've had fairly reliable cars. Okay. Like they've all been used, but they were all like, a Volvo or a Subaru that were like really well maintained or whatever. So when I got this Honda Civic though, there were some quirky things about it that I had to learn, like, oops, if I push that button, it'll drain the battery or this light accidentally goes on or whatever, those quirky things you learn about cars over time, especially used cars. And so a few times when I first got it, I had to get it jumped because I was learning all these things. And obviously the battery wasn't that great because it was just getting drained. So that wasn't expensive to replace. So ended up replacing the battery and it's worked since then. Right. But still, I noticed that I had this vibe, like if I put in the key, I'm not sure if the damn thing's going to start or not, or how long it'll run for, or whatever. So I had this sort of anxiety, like, okay, I need to see what happens, turn the key. And when it started, I would kiss it. I would be like, thank you so much for starting. And my friend that was with me at the time, when she would take the car out, she said she did it too, because she's like, I don't know why the fuck it's starting now, but maybe it's because you kiss it. So I'm going to kiss it too. So I would just be, kind of stressed out. However, I wasn't that stressed out because we were on vacation. And it's like, well, what's the worst case scenario? I can like call an Uber or something, right? So, but it reminded me of this familiar visceral feeling that I had when I was in high school and I had this like Dodge Colt that never was reliable. Like sometimes it would stall on me, like at an intersection. I had to learn all those weird things, like at a red light, I would have to like put it in neutral and then put on the brake and then gas it because the idle thing was fucked up, or oxygen sensors or whatever you call it, right? So I had this constant state every day of this like low level anxiety about like, am I going to have additional stress here? So I was stressed about having additional stress because I didn't have a reliable car. And I was kind of being reminded of that feeling with this Honda Civic, right? And, when I finally could afford to, that's why one of the main things I was committed to was buying a reliable car. because I was like, I just want to know that my car is going to start. I just want to get in, especially at the time, like I couldn't afford to like take a cab if it broke down or whatnot, right? So while money doesn't buy absolute happiness, right, it does solve many problems. And that's a problem that money could solve for me. It could help me buy reliable shit, right? And so you may have heard about like past research that showed in or like after about $75,000 a year in US dollars for Americans, and I think they also compared Canada and some European countries. 75,000 a year was kind of this cutoff of like people kind of need to make that to pay some basic needs and live a quality of life, like they can take some vacations and whatnot. And their happiness scale kind of plateaus there. Even if you make like 100, 125, 150. And I think like after 150 or 180, it got bumped up again a little bit. But there was this sort of assumption from this study that was done by Nobel laureate Angus Deaton in 2015. Like, well, actually, the study was older than that. He got the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2015. But anyway, so we kind of thought, oh, you sort of peak at 75, right? So why are we all striving to earn so much? Well, there was a new study published in January of 2021. And they found a strong correlation between household income and emotional well-being and life satisfaction that went past even above the 75,000 mark. So this was kind of like, oh, what? Like, were we like totally wrong here about that? Right. And then so this was based, like they had an app and they would ping people and ask them, hey, how are you feeling right now? How satisfied are you with your life? Just kind of like asking some questions to reflect and ping them throughout the day. Because sometimes when people are asked to recall how happy you were today or yesterday, we kind of have false memories about thinking it's more happy than it actually was, right? So this was very reliable because it was pinging them throughout the day. And that's a really robust study for so many reasons, right? Because of the design, but also the sheer number of people, the 33,000 plus people, and the over 1.5 million entries. So larger incomes were robustly associated with more positive feelings in day-to-day moments and life satisfaction, which is more like an evaluative approach, right? So does this mean, Rebels, that money can buy happiness? Not exactly, right? You knew the answer to that. Like if it did, there wouldn't be so many pissed off rich people, right? But anyway, so mental health experts still say it's a multifaceted experience, this happiness, right? And it's achieved through mindset, not just money. So why does money correlate with emotional well-being? Well, this could be like a whole book, right? But while the study showed a connection between money and emotional well-being, it couldn't explain the reasons behind the trends that well. That's going to be future studies, you future doctorate students, right? So remember, causation, correlation doesn't equal causation, right? So we have to remember that. But one possibility that was suggested was in the car example I gave earlier, right? Like wealth, financial security helps people avoid some causes of suffering. While it can't solve all the causes, it can solve some of them. So up to a point, wealth allows us to meet the basic needs of survival. And it's hard to experience consistent happiness if you might get evicted, or if your car might not be able to get you to work, or if you have food stress. Stress and fear dominate instead. Right? It's hard to experience happiness if you can never take time off, if you can't pay for medical bills, right? So financial security can give a sense of freedom, right? I've talked about freedom of time, money, energy, and location. And financial security gives us a sense of stability and a sense that we have more control over our lives. And the study found that people's sense of control over their lives accounted for 74% of connection between the income and experienced well-being. And while that's huge, I want you to remember that having a sense of control over our lives, which is a feeling, I feel in control, right? We've all clearly seen over the last year and a half during this pandemic, there's a lot we don't have control over. And that this sense of control actually stems from our thoughts. There are lots of people with lots of money who still feel they have no control or stability in their lives. But when we have financial security, we have to do a lot less thought management about having a sense of control because our thoughts of insecurity and powerlessness are triggered less often. You're not having the car that doesn't start. You're not stressing about the insurance. So there's less triggers, right? So, in my example, if you can't afford a reliable car, when you start the car, you may have feelings and not knowing if it'll start or how long it'll run. But then you're older, you have a newer car that's more reliable, or at least faith that, hey, if it doesn't start, I can easily get roadside assistance or get a ride or whatever. And that will bring you less stress, and less stress is related to greater happiness. Yeah. So another thing we need to consider is the role that money plays in our lives, which also comes from thoughts in this sense, right? The research showed there was a stronger correlation between income and experience well-being if participants felt that money was really important to them, regardless of how much they made per year. So it wasn't a matter of, oh, if you have a lot of money and you think it's important. It was like, no matter the income, if people thought that money was important to them, there was a much stronger correlation. So this is, why when I do thought work with clients, you can change your thoughts about debt. You can change your thoughts about all these different money concepts that put you in a better place to manage it and not have it bring you down as much, right? Because of this correlation. And participants who feel that money was a sign of your true success in life, they also tended to have this really steep link between income and well-being, right? So this is all evidence, my friends, that our thoughts about money influence its role in our happiness. And this is so important to see because we can often think it's just the number. And this is not to say it's not partly the number, but it's a really good example of how it is not just the number, okay? So, we know that there are other ways to be happy, right? Generosity, doing nice things for other people, diet, lifestyle, sleep, exercise, right? Increasing our compassion and empathy, realizing that our shared human experience and connection is there, our interdependence, and by our sense of purpose, like I talked about in last week's podcast, right? And so, Chris Guillebeau, he had a book called The Happiness of Pursuit. I just thought that was such a clever title, The Happiness of Pursuit, that sense of purpose, right? But back to money, because that's what we're talking about. So if we know, let me take a sip of my tea here. I'm so sad because I don't have my favorite tea, but this will work. So we know that money doesn't solve all problems, but it does solve many problems. And it's highly correlated with positive feelings and life satisfaction, both factors in happiness. So what the hell should we aim for, right? How can we find that balance? And between having enough and creating and feeling abundance, right? So for a lot of people, there's a big goal of wanting to hit 6 figures, right? And this is a big thing in entrepreneurship, definitely within coaching and, independent contracting, like graphic designers and things like that. It's like, ooh, 100K. Or another parameter is often like, if I make what I made in corporate, because I left my job, right? So I want to prove that I can at least make what I made in corporate. And, there's all this cheesy marketing that goes around like, oh, make your 6 figures with my blueprint and this and that. But, last year when I was really struggling with seasonal affective disorder and burnout, I was doing some serious reevaluation of my priorities. And I wanted to know, what was my true minimum income I needed to be happy and still feel fulfilled with the things I wanted to do in life and be able to offer my gifts to the world, right? And I've gone through this process a few times, and you will need to as well, because what you feel like you need and want right now will change over time, right? But, you know, a lot of people dump their idea of success into, oh, am I making at least six figures, right? So I really had to think, okay, I am good at earning right now and creating that, but how can I find more balance? How can I find more of a satisfaction and joy and not feeling like I'm supposed to be earning X amount? I want to come up with that number for myself and what my values are. Because, like, the people that are saying, oh, you need to earn this much, they're also like buying diamonds and like classic cars and all this stuff that I don't care about. I like good food. I like traveling. I like these other experiences, right? So like what's one person's number isn't going to be my number. It's not going to be your number, right? And while the research shows that there's a correlation with increased income, that makes it more confusing, right? We now know that, okay, it's no longer like, well, if I make 75, at least I know I'll be happy. We have to also decide, oh, but if I keep earning, there is a more positive correlation. So like, where do I call it? Right? Because there's this sort of patriarchal component to more, earn more. There's this consumerist and capitalist model that's based in patriarchy. That's like consume, consume, consume. If you don't do more, you're not good enough. Right? And we have this often this perception like I am not enough if I'm not constantly doing more. You look at the corporate model. It's not like, hey, let's figure out what we all want to make and be happy. It's like, no, every year you have to earn more and more and more. And that's not sustainable. And that's a patriarchal model. Yeah. So we need to look at that and be like, okay, what is a sustainable number for us? And if I happen to earn more than that, great, but it's not the driving force, right? So the driving force behind the earning, behind the number, isn't coming from this lack of self-worth, this lack of self-love, this lack of feeling incomplete. It's coming from instead a baseline understanding that we are 100% worthy right now. It's coming from a goal of being creative and wanting to share our gifts and coming up with that number, right? Because then when we have that number, we can relax. We can say, okay, wow, that's the number. And if I do earn all above here, that's great, right? But I can like relax knowing that this is my enough. Now, some people's enough is 50 grand. Some people's enough is 150 grand. I'm not going to judge you for whatever your enough is. But what I want to do, and in the podcast that drops tomorrow, you'll see in the show notes, there's links to some spreadsheets. And in those spreadsheets, I help you discover your enough. And we're not talking like, what can you live off of and avoid destitution, right? No, I'm talking about like, what's your enough in like, you can have simple abundance. So you can go on a couple of vacations and maybe you're not camping in Morocco, but you're camping at your state park. Or like you can go out to eat at a restaurant, maybe not 3 or 4 times a week, but a couple times a month. Maybe you can get massages once a month. Like, what is your enough? And that's totally going to depend on you and your values and your priorities, right? And that's unique to you. So when we come up with that enough, that is our sort of like, okay, I don't have to listen to all of this external pressure. The drive now to earn more than that can come from within, from this will be fun to earn more, this will be creative. And oops, sorry, let me turn that off. It's not going to be like, oh, I need that to be happy. Because often we think so much like, I want to earn this much because when I get there, then I'll be so happy. We can actually be happy right now with our thoughts. And it's easier to be happy at 75,000 than under that in most Western countries, right? And yeah, you can continue to be happier on this scale because of the problems that money can solve, even though it can't solve all of them. But when we know this enough, we can let go of this sort of external motivation for earning more than that. Right? So we have our minimum for the simple abundance. Now, sometimes we need to kind of go bigger before we like wean things down. So you might do like your ideal, like, oh, ideally, I'd love to get a massage a week and this and that. And ask me, like that's on my list. But, getting a massage a week, traveling to these exotic places, you can have that. And then you can look at, okay, well, what do I really need? And how could I really be content with less? And sort of trim it down and just see what your enough is. And then you can have your enough, you can have your ideal. You can even make one for freaking anything is possible, right? And then that number, you just have those different visions, right? And I have just found that it's super helpful for me in really clarifying what my enough is. Because then I can say, all right, that's what I'm going to aim for, right? So the caveats, again, you may have to do this several times before arriving at your number. This number is also going to change over time because as you change, your circumstances change, right? Like mine after having a kid, right? You're going to reevaluate those numbers. And, when you have that number of enough, what's interesting is when you know you're enough, your simple abundance, more abundance flows to you. And I think it's because when you've met that sort of simple abundance number, you go, oh, look at all this amazingness I have in my life. And then because of the law of attraction, your attitude of gratitude, you're going to be calling in even more abundance, right? And I just want to remind you, when you do get that abundance, think wisely about how you use it. Right? Use it for experiences and not things. We know that helps people be happier when you buy experiences instead of things, when you are generous, when you share, right? So you are already 100% worthy. You get to decide what's enough for you. All right. And while you strive to create abundance, remember to put in the thought work, the active mindfulness to remind yourself of your true power to live with integrity and joy. Okay. So tomorrow, go to the pod, give me a 5-star rating while you're in there, please. It helps it get shared with other people. Download those worksheets. There's a Macintosh version with numbers, and then there's an Excel spreadsheet. Okay. Okay, loves. Come join Freedom School too. This is all in there. Joinfreedomschool.com. I would love to see you in there. We are rocking right now with our spiritual cleanse. It's pretty awesome. So joinfreedomschool.com. I love you so much. Thank you for coming. Have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next week. Okay? Aloha. Bye. Yes, we are going to close all of these screens, y'all. Thank you for coming. Oh, it was so good to see you. Hey, Daniel, Mel.